the judgment that Jesus pronounces upon these people who he describes as being scribes and chief priests, people who sit in places of authority, but they do not have a love for the people. They're in it for whatever reason it may be, and oftentimes it has to do with monetary things or prestige. And Jesus talks about that. They love to go down to the marketplace and all dressed up in their finery and have everybody admire them and ooh and ah and all those things. It adds to the ego, very fleshly, very worldly. But Jesus has called pastors and ministers and those of us who have a calling in our lives. He's called us to serve people and to have a heart of service. And it should not be for how much I can gain from it financially or anything like that. It's a very serious calling of God. And oftentimes it's a call to sacrifice. But the thing it is that I've said before, the penalty is quite severe. He says, people who, as he describes it now, this is the Gospel of Mark, chapter 12, verse 40, which devour widows' houses, and for a pretense, making long prayers. That's kind of like the publican and the Pharisee. Remember he talks about how that the Pharisee stood up there and he prayed this big flowery prayer that everybody could hear him, and how wonderful this man thought he was. And Jesus condemned him. And he said, look at this publican over here. He's got his head bowed down, and he's looking down at the ground, and he's being very humble in his prayers. And Jesus talked about this. He says, the Father will accept that prayer before he'll accept that big flowery prayer because of the condition of the heart. And that's the point to the calling of God and the response to the call of God. It has to be a condition of the heart, and the heart has to be pliable that God can speak to it and minister to it so that we can continually learn to de-emphasize ourselves, not let it be about ourselves. And that's a harder thing that you might realize for people who are in the ministry, to not let it be about themselves and to get caught up into pride and have the desire to have people look at you and say, oh, look how great and how wonderful this person is. All of that is what Jesus is talking about. He says they're bringing greater damnation unto themselves. I'm just telling you what the Word of God says in the Gospel of Mark chapter 12, verse 40. He says they're bringing greater damnation into themselves because their heart is not truly committed to their calling for the purpose of service, but they've gotten themselves caught up in loving the attention and the praises of the people, and they've lost their way. And as I said, his judgment of that is very much to say, you are bringing damnation into yourselves because you have forgot what the true calling is. And that is a calling to serve and to sacrifice for the good of the kingdom. This is Pastor Jack King with the gospel on the radio broadcast.